first thing, are you going to be on video or just audio?
Yeah, I'm gonna go on video here in a second.
Okay, cool. So first off, man, just thank you for being so willing to give some feedback and jump on the line and help us out, learn a little
Absolutely.
bit more about you. I know that that you're a busy guy and you got a lot of sacrifice, so we really appreciate anytime people are willing to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you guys have been a big part of my growth as a coach and everything. So I was excited at the opportunity to talk.
Sweet. Well, that's awesome. And I think, Bo, that's really what I think. If I'm just to set some expectations around this and like try to frame it up in a way that's valuable, it's ultimately that's why we exist, right? We want to empower you to be your best. And when we talk about like our value proposition, it's helping you coach more athletes better. And so I really would love to learn more about, I think, how you've grown to date, a little bit more even with your background, and then I think from a vision perspective, where you hope to go. And then maybe we can explore some of those kind of like, okay, if here's where you started, here's where you are, and here's where you want to go, what in here might be the challenges that you are experiencing and or you foresee that would be obstacles in the way that we can help you really overcome. And so like I would say with a conversation like this, I do my best to actually zoom people out of the product a little bit. And like, let's just talk about your life and your vision as a coach. And don't worry too much about like the actual interface or the technology as it exists today. Like our job is to build you what you need, not what you have. Right.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we can do that. How's it sound?
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds good.
Cool. And then I think my last caveat is there will be times where I might like maybe even interrupt something you're saying and that's in hopes of actually going deeper on something because I hear something really interesting. So really try not to take that as like me being rude. It's super curious and really interested, and oftentimes like coaches think something they're doing is like really trivial, and I'm like, no, that's the most interesting thing in the world. We gotta go deeper on that. So if I do that, that's not. I'm really trying to be rude. I'm really just trying to learn more about you.
Absolutely. No, it totally makes sense.
Cool. All right. So let's start maybe at the beginning. So give me just some background on yourself and kind of like, I guess, what did the start of your coaching journey look like? Where did that come from and how did you start to take that path?
Yeah. So I actually started going to school for economics. Was my original major in undergrad, and I had to take a health elective. I had always been active in sports and everything went up, and kind of looking back, I've been able to see how the coaching pathway lines up with how I just trained myself as a kid.
Yep.
So, for example, I competed in surfing as a kid, but I lived in Pennsylvania.
No way.
And so I learned that, I might not get to surf as much as my competitors do, but at least I can be in the best shape possible to be the first person out to the waves in competition, so I could have the highest scoring potential and the priority of the heat to do the best. So maybe I didn't get to surf as much and have as much repetition there, but I was like, nobody's going to beat me out to the waves. And so that happened as I was like elementary, middle school, and carried all the way through high school and into the college of my training. So it was kind of interesting looking back. But I went to school for economics, had to take a health class as just, a gen ed. I had a really powerful teacher. Her name was Kelly Sprinkle. And he goes, Bo, I got 6 brothers. 3 work on Wall Street and 3 are in health and fitness fields. And the 3 on Wall Street have enough medicine that, they could start their own pharmacy for what they have to take on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Miserable. They make tons of money, but they're absolutely miserable. And she's like, I got, 3 brothers that are in the health field and fitness, and they're happy as can be. They're healthy. They got great families, yada, yada, yada. Like, laid out the list, and I went and changed my major the next day.
No way. How early was that?
That was my second semester of freshman year.
Okay.
And so I made that change and kind of didn't look back from there. So she was just super helpful, and I definitely took more of an interest in the topic. So I think she had that talk with me because of my interest in the class.
Sure.
And she was like, "What are you doing?" So and then I went into, grad school, worked at the Division I level at George Washington University as a coach. So I had that Division I experience as a volunteer coach there as I was a grad assistant on the campus rec side during my time there. So I got the private sector kind of personal training background, but then I also worked on the D1 side. Got to the point where I had my own teams that I was working with on a regular basis. After that,
could you dig into both sides of that experience a little bit? Like, what did you see and feel on the team side, and then what was your exposure on that private side like?
Yeah, so the team side, I loved the atmosphere. I loved trying to solve a problem for a group versus just an individual. So for example, I worked with women's volleyball was one team I worked with, and they had substantial differences in energy level on days they would come in to train. And as a coach, you're like, okay, this is my plan A. I would love to get this done today. And, I quickly learned that plan A very rarely happens in training, and kind of shifted my philosophy to more be a skeleton of, okay, I want to get these variables accomplished in some capacity today versus I want to back squat today. Like, it became a very different approach. And so I love the team aspect of trying to connect with the group and understand that what they're going through as student athletes. That was really fun, and I think it played a role in how I connect remotely now with my career. And then being I was the personal training director for the school as my grad assistantship. So it was great because I didn't have the pressure of like a big box gym with numbers and quotas, but it's like, hey, we want to grow this so we can buy new equipment for the gym and support athletic teams on campus with the revenue from campus rec. So it was a very nice entry into, hey, let's make some profits here because then we can do more. And so I enjoyed.
You guys are selling like memberships to just faculty and local kids, or like student athletes.
You had to be in the local area. You had to have some affiliation to GW to get a membership. So that my client that I could actually go after was relatively small compared to other gyms in the area. But I had all the past data from all the, past GAs that, worked the position. And so I was like, all right, well, we're going to crush these numbers like this. So that was kind of the business side of me. So, I got really lucky. I thought I wanted to be a Division I strength coach, and I still have that urge a little bit in the right capacity. Like if it ever worked out, I would be okay with it. But it would have to kind of be on a little bit more of just, my quality of life versus me coming in and getting beat to crap like a normal entry level strength coach at Division I level does. And I think a lot of that is because of my exposure to both the private sector and the Division I level at the same time, and seeing kind of the flaws of both, or what do I enjoyed from both, and now finding a way to construct my own business around that same general flow of what I learned from those two roles. I would say that experience was by far the most pivotal of my career. And then from there, I worked for Facebook at their company headquarters as a corporate fitness coach for their staff. So I moved out to the Bay Area, worked at their headquarters there for half a year, it turned out, and then got the opportunity to go over to Japan for the Department of Defense.
Wow.
And got to train search and rescue swimmers, and also run a 9-week intervention study on the kids living on base. So they had a severe obesity issue starting to happen.
No way.
So I was stationed in Yokosuka, which is about an hour south of Tokyo, hour and a half south of Tokyo. And it's the largest international naval base. So they're like, if we can solve this problem here, we can take this model and apply it to smaller bases throughout, the world. So
how did those opportunities pop up though? So you go through like the college thing, you do your GA thing. How did you get an opportunity like the Facebook thing? Why was that compelling? And then why did you suddenly flip script and go, whoa, I want to do something else from this?
Yeah. So I had applied. So Facebook's contract was through Plus One with Optum at the time. And so I'd applied for a couple positions, corporate fitness positions, because I knew the Division I strength in general schedule was not going to fit what I had envisioned for my life, just day-to-day wise. But I still wanted to coach and kind of have that team atmosphere. So I thought corporate fitness, you're working for the same company, especially a tech company. You have, a lot of people that are just higher level thinkers that will challenge what you're doing, and it allows for growth. A lot of them still compete in different aspects of their lives. So I was like, I can get a little bit of that value without, having to work 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. every night. So I took that, and long story short, they misquoted me on my offer letter. And I found out 2 weeks into working there when I got my first paycheck, and it was severely different than what I had on my offer sheet. And
we added an extra zero. Sorry, that's not.
So it came out to about a $10 difference per hour.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So I had done all the calculations off of being able to afford the Bay Area based off of my offer letter. The long story short, it was a gradual parting of ways, just because they weren't willing to, but they were trying to get me to sign a new offer sheet, and I was like, I can't afford to live out here with what you're offering.
Yeah.
So I was looking around for other opportunities and just happened to find the job posting. It was supposed to be a 3-month contract to go over. Ended up staying for 6. And it just happened to work out time-wise when I was a little bit lost and confused about the whole offer thing. And, first job out of grad school all of a sudden goes up in flames. But then, getting the opportunity to go over to Japan for 6 months and kind of hone in on what I enjoyed training and kind of start anew was actually really helpful.
Yeah. And then, so how did that lead to Bowmanklature and then subsequently, I guess, lifelong athlete? Like, what's that? Where are the next couple steps on your path?
Yeah. So after I got back from Japan, I had just built a ton of facility management experience through the jobs I'd had, from the rec centers and everything. So I ended up working at Penn for a year in their campus rec department, but more on facilities and ops side. I helped with some renovations and bringing in new equipment just with my coaching background. They're like, all right, let's walk through this. Makes sense for our students. Like they had a severe lack of squat rack space compared to bench press and things like that. So I helped them kind of balance things out based off of just my thoughts from training and, just balancing out the human body a little bit and what people gravitate toward, and even changing things like where mirrors were placed within the facility, because then you're going to have a log jam of people looking at themselves. So helped with a couple projects like that. At the same time, I ended up getting picked up by a company called Ritter Sports Performance, which also was Train Heroic at this time. And at the time that I joined, they were using PDFs. So I was in the process of interviewing different app companies, and I was like, we got to get rid of these PDFs. So that's where
what about that was so problematic? Like, you came in and you're like, this is bad. And what's the why behind that?
I mean, it got to the point where, we were just sending a web page that had an exercise library. And in my head, I was like, this is already something else that they're going to have to log into to go see. Like, the library wasn't viewable without a username and password. And I was just like, in the long term, you can write a great program on a PDF, but I was like, if we're really going to use technology and use it wisely, I think we got to limit the number of steps someone has to take to truly understand their program.
Yeah.
And that's where, having videos attached to the actual name of the exercise is critical in my eye. So I took that company. So when I started there, their online training revenue was right around probably $1,000 a month. By the time I got done, I had built it to a full-time salary for me and then some. And had really gotten understanding of how to do things and grow a company. And honestly, just got to the point where I was outgrowing my role and realized that to make true changes of, what I wanted to grow in the future, it was going to take me going out on my own and doing that by myself, so I could have that autonomy to really set things up the way I thought would be effective. So a simple example is just Go ahead.
And so this is awesome stuff. A couple things. One, I think my guy's coming up. But I really want to dig into what you just said there. So you grew Ritter Sports Performance, and you mentioned like it was enough to carve out a full-time salary for you and whatnot. Yeah. What was that like when you were taking this on? Is that something they were doing at all? You said there was like $1,000 of revenue there. Where?
Yeah.
I guess like how did the revenue growth occur? Like, where did you notice it started to kind of do this or whatever, and get sizable? Was it all like, I guess what I mean is it like selling one-off programs? Was it having success, like doing some group or team training online, or was it actually in like a highly personalized bespoke fashion? And like when you were doing that, how were you feeling as a constituent, a piece of this Ritter puzzle? Like, you're like, hey, I'm an employee, I'm creating all this growth. How do you feel during that period?
Yeah, so it was a combination. So I had teams. So I worked with full teams remotely, and this is all remote. I worked with one-on-one reoccurring payment, high-end programs. I also had a membership site that I created from scratch, and then also had a few just standalone programs available, like one-time fee type deal.
Yeah.
One-on-one reoccurring was definitely the most powerful, or was most effective. In terms of recruiting people and getting that, it was honestly just creating content left and right. So I did a live webinar each month. I'd write a blog each week. I did all these things that, would build up and capture email and do all that sort of stuff that, we see out there now in the email marketing world. And basically just stuck to that I basically put my head down for a year and said, all right, I'm just going to create as much as I can. And we got to the point where, we just had a lot of leads coming in, and, our retention rate was super high. In terms of where I kind of felt, so I started as a 1099 for the company, and eventually got to the point where I was like, listen, I'm doing enough that I feel like I need to be an actual employee of this company, have some more buy-in. One thing I was pushing for was some sort of equity, or some sort of, what does the future look like? Because although I love coaching, I love evolving. And I was like, where do I stand after I hit my peak of like, I can't take any more clients on, or, there's not really much more I can do in that realm. Is it coaching other trainers? Like, what I wanted to see the future, and honestly, those discussions just didn't happen. And weren't, it was about 2 years of kind of pushing these discussions that I realized they probably weren't going to happen.
And what do you think the reason is? What was the allergy to avoiding such a discussion?
Honestly, I think, the owner just never thought it was going to get that big. I think it started as like a sole entrepreneur type deal of how big can one person make it. And then, he saw the value of bringing some extra people on to help different disciplines. So like we had a registered dietitian, we had a stroke technique coach for swimming that would analyze your stroke if you'd submit a video and things like that. And, I think it got bigger than he really had envisioned, honestly, and didn't really have the thoughts in place on what that looked like when you actually had people that were willing to kind of run and grow. So it just kind of got to a stalemate.
Yeah. He's like, this is awesome growth, and I don't want to pay for it.
Right, exactly.
So you mentioned like the one-on-one space that was really where the growth was happening, and somewhat like you basically built, for lack of a better term, like an inbound funnel that you're driving through content and email and things of this nature. Did you find that like a lot of the growth was local to Pennsylvania and like where you were, or were you getting clients kind of wherever?
No. So I actually just moved to Pennsylvania. I was in Austin, Texas for 3 years.
Okay.
For that, which is a whole nother, I took a strength coach job down there after Penn, just for fun, because I got to work with Olympic level athletes. I was like, this is awesome. So that kind of fits in there as well with the growth, same time with the growth of Ritter. And then into nomenclature and lifelong athlete. But
so is Ritter's in where?
North Carolina is where he's.
Okay, so you were fully remote for Ritter.
Fully remote. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's fine. Got it.
So I still, even to this day, I have clients in the UK, Australia, all across the US. I actually have only one client in Pennsylvania, and I've been training him for multiple years and never met him in person.
And so the work you're doing with nomenclature and lifelong now, like, first of all, did you port clients from Ritter over with you, or was like, no, we got to break up? And
I couldn't do that just based off of non-competes for a certain time. Now that I'm past that, some of those clients have definitely come back, but most of my growth now is new, or they followed me on Instagram, they followed me on Facebook, and then they've been following along with all my new, rendition of things, and have, finally reached out. But I was starting completely from scratch. Cool.
Good for you, man. And I guess, like, how did you made that transition? You're building your own thing. What percentage is online? What percentage is in person for you?
Yeah. So in terms of my personal business, everything's online. Besides for teams, I'll do a site visit once a quarter usually. So I'll go out and assess them at the beginning of the year, get all their assessment data that I want to use for their program. And then I'll go out, during, their winter, and then go out usually during their championship meet or championship event, and then they're off.
Okay.
I do work with since moving to Pennsylvania, I do work as just a stipend strength coach at a little high school nearby, just to kind of get out of the house and still stay in touch with coaching, because I still love coaching in person. I just basically the whole online thing to not be a limiting factor in my marriage and allow my wife to pursue her opportunities as well, because normally on the coaching side, you drive the boat. So I didn't want to do that at all times.
That's awesome, man. So what I'm hearing is like the idea of kind of owning your journey is pretty important. Like being able to have some autonomy and flexibility for how you do it. You do appreciate like actually still the face-to-face like atmosphere environment, but from a practical perspective, you're seeing a little bit more opportunity to like have a little bit A, a little bit of B, and not view them necessarily as competing entities, but like both income streams within your more kind of cohesive business model that you're trying to build.
Yeah.
Is that pretty accurate? Like how does that sound relative to like what you're experiencing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I learned pretty early on when you, as a coach, when you feel like you have to coach to make a paycheck, it's not your best work.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, if I can build this online to be like a quote unquote base salary, and then really pick and choose my opportunities and still coach in person, I think that's, I don't think I'll ever be. I had a small stint of fully remote, and I was like, I still got to get out there and coach. Like it's the coach in me. But when you don't have to worry about that income and you can truly just go out and coach, it's super freeing. And then I get better work and I can provide better service to those people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is like for the online side, is it principally right now, like what's the breakdown between, I guess, your personal coaching, bespoke, highly custom, to, hey, I'm working with like some people in like a, small group setting, to like, hey, I'm just selling some templates or whatever?
Yeah. So I can give you the complete breakdown. Right now I have 2 teams I work with, one in the UK, one out in Oregon. I have about 12 one-on-one clients that I work with. And then I have a membership site that fluctuates between 15 and 20 members right now, with the goal of hitting 100 members in 2020. And then I have 3 one-off programs that you can buy. I don't really push those too much. It's more of, I use them as like add-ons if someone wants something a little different. So one of those is like strictly body weight. One of them is, just base strength. And then one is power output, are kind of the breakdowns of that. So they're out there. I don't push them as well as I probably should, because a lot of people are a little bit wary of reoccurring payments at this point, because there's so many out there.
Yeah.
So I've definitely seen a trend shift back toward the one-on-one payment or the one-time payment side. So I'm trying to figure out how to capitalize on that a little bit more. And I truly think that's just because everywhere you look, there's subscriptions now.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of wearing people down.
Yeah. And what do you mean by that? Like what category are you seeing that with? Like in your personal coaching, people don't want a recurring fee, or is it like where are you like, I don't want to keep paying for this thing?
Yeah, I think it's honestly the best way to describe it is people like to pay some sort of lump sum up front and know that they get everything that they want, kind of as that upfront thing. It's a lot more of, it takes a lot more of a relationship, whether it's through content or through actual interaction with a person, to get them to be comfortable with that reoccurring payment. Even like my membership site is $10 a month. Like it's like a no-brainer when you look at it price wise. Like it's not going to stretch you or anything like that, even if you have a gym membership and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I still find people take a lot more trust and content and exposure to be comfortable with even that. Where if you're like, hey, here's a program for $150, it's 3 months, one-time fee, they're like, oh, okay, it has a start and an end. So then they feel like they have more control of the situation.
And this is like a custom program you're writing for them.
No, so it's slightly custom based off of their they take an assessment at the beginning.
Okay.
And it gets modified based off of, I'll either do percentages or whatever, kind of based off the data they put in. but it's still very hands off in terms of my interaction with them once they start the program.
Okay.
I tell them there's no phone calls, anything like that when you buy this, where like one-on-ones I talk to once a month on the phone, or Zoom, I'll use Zoom. But then I try to sprinkle in it, and actually the new notification side on the app, like when someone logs a session on the program, now I just hop in and say, hey, great job with that. What did you struggle with? What was easy? And even if I'm not really going to go in and change anything for them, it still gives them that extra feel of, hey, he actually did look at what I did. So, yeah.
Okay. And like, where do you see for you the most growth right now? Like, what's the breadwinner for you?
Right now, I'd say one-on-ones are still, people just like, so it's interesting in terms of the going back to the one-time payment. That's definitely the entry level that I'm seeing more success with, and I'm not even really promoting it. Like, I thought the membership site would be enough of an entry level for people. But the one-time payment programs are actually doing, they're picking up steam, and I'm not even promoting them. So that's been interesting to watch. But then in terms of the long-term side of things, people just love the one-on-one because they just feel like they get that extra resource, to hop on the phone or whatnot. And my retention rate is honestly, since I started my own company, I haven't lost a client in a year. So
you said you have like 12. What was the stable you're managing? Like 12?
Right now, right around 12. So,
okay. Do you mind me asking what your price point is? I don't know if it's online.
So $250 a month gets you weekly updates to your program. So I still write the program for the whole month or the whole block, whatever we're doing. But I'll go back in on like a Friday or Thursday, look at your results and tweak things if I need to. $150 a month gets you monthly updates to your program. So it's released at the beginning of each month. I send out a little, note with, hey, make sure you pay extra attention to these exercises and stuff like that. So those are the two price points for that. So it's, and people all the time, they'll ask me about the weekly because they'll usually start with the weekly and then drop to the monthly.
Okay.
But I'm actually seeing more of a trend now, people just staying with the weekly because as soon as they have it, they like it and they don't really want to change it.
Yeah. And what I think you've done very well with like your branding recently, like this lifelong athlete thing. How did you settle on that niche versus maybe what you were doing before?
Yeah. So I honestly, I still have that coaching mentality of I don't like to be in the spotlight, which is not the greatest mentality when you're trying to do a completely online, business. So Bowmanklature was always kind of like my personal little, my Instagram handle is kind of started. It honestly started with a one-on-one client. I was writing a workout up on the board for her, and I was like, let me know if you don't understand some of the nomenclature. And she's like, oh, that's not nomenclature, that's Bowmanklature. And I was like, boom.
Boom, thanks for branding.
Yeah, it's like, please don't charge me for every time we use that moving forward. But it got to the point where I was like, I don't feel the urge to grow Bowmanklature. Like, it's too self-centered. Where my goal of teaching people that they can still achieve athletic accomplishments well into their lives as a master's athlete, for example, or just even, lifelong athlete is being able to keep up with your grandkids type of deal. And I realized that that's an area that's not covered very well. And even if you look at the data and the research, they look at people that didn't exercise their whole lives. So of course they're going to lose strength and power. Like, they didn't do anything. So I found that it's an area that's not given enough attention, and there's actually a lot of room for growth and improvement, which, from showing the worth of the program is nice to be able to have that value and not, I'm not really fighting for inches when someone has had no formal strength training into their 30s. Like, I know I'm going to see improvement. It's just how much, right? So it's, I'm comfortable with, making claims of certain sorts and be like, yeah, if you follow this, you're going to see some sort of result. Like, it's going to happen. And honestly, people will just quit when pain is involved, low back pain, shoulder pain, whatever. And I'm like, there's so many more ways around this that we're not considering. So I get sick and tired. Honestly, it just ticks me off. So I was like, well, instead of being ticked off about it, let's try to solve it and teach people how to take care of themselves and still be able to jump and run and swim as fast as they want to when they're 40, 50, 60 years old, instead of complaining about things all the time.
So the people you're serving are really, I mean, it sounds like your emphasis, at least, I don't know if this is what they're buying into, your emphasis on like improving capacity and ability and results versus like, I haven't heard you say right now, like, I want to lose a bunch of weight or like look a certain way. Like, what's your differentiation within that? And is that something that you're noticing is like, you view it a certain way, or are people coming to you saying, I want this?
So the way I describe it to people, and I'm crystal clear with them, in kind of intro calls for one-on-one clients, for example, I say my goal is not necessarily weight loss and things like that, or body composition changes, but that is definitely a side effect that clients report.
The function piece form in that way.
Yeah. So I make it clear that while that's not my personal goal for what we're trying to accomplish of, getting rid of pain and helping you be a better athlete for what you want to accomplish, I do make it clear that, almost every client I've ever worked with reports a change in body composition because they build muscle mass, things of that nature. So, I definitely don't push it. One of my friends he's a very good marketer. He has his own marketing firm, and he's like, dude, you got to start taking the shirt off. And I'm like, that's just not the brand I'm trying to develop. There's enough of it out there. Not that I have a problem with it. Like, great. If it's landing you clients and business, have at it. But it just wasn't for me and kind of my personal, moral side of it. So yeah, I've made it pretty clear that I'll shorten the shorts a little bit, but I won't take the shirt off and propose.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing just also feels very authentic to you, and that's been like a big piece of it. Is like, you want to do this thing on your terms. You want to do it in a way that makes sense to you. You don't want to necessarily put yourself in the spotlight because that's just not who you are.
Right.
So it feels nice to hear somebody really building a business that supports themselves, and they're not necessarily like completely sacrificing themselves to build. I think that's really an admirable quality you certainly have with this. So Bo, like, what are, I guess, okay, you have some sort of vision out there. How would you describe that vision for like what you want this to become?
Yeah, so I honestly have been thinking a lot about this heading into next year, just because I want to really put some things into action. I'd love to build it into more of a community, so people striving for common goals, of whether that common goal is an actual sporting endeavor or just, hey, I want a community that's focused on, as minimal pain with movement and things like that, and kind of relying on each other. So I just lightly kicked off a Facebook group more to get some content in there and get some people involved, because I want to start using that to figure out where everybody lives, and also start hosting pop-up live events. So I have two that I'm working on for 2020. One's going to be right outside of Boston, and one is going to be in Wisconsin, figuring out the details of where in Wisconsin. But weirdly enough, I have an interesting following building in Wisconsin. An old one-on-one client from Ritter who just has continued to talk about me to her peers, and they've started looking me up and everything. So I have enough of a following there that warrants potential one-on-one, seminar type deal.
Yeah.
And so my goal is I would love to see the membership site continue to grow, because I think people enjoy that aspect. They enjoy being in a community. I post challenges. I use the leaderboard feature as much as I can, when necessary to, get some competition going and whatnot. And people seem to like that. So I'd love to. There's definitely been a feedback that, hey, if you were to host some in-person events, we would make an effort to attend.
Yeah.
Kind of picking, at least for the first year, where that seems the best or where to go, would be the best. And it's in the early stages, but I'd love to bring a live component to the online component. So the thing I love about the online side is, there's plenty of tech companies out there launching apps, but they're losing a lot of the human element. And so, my niche is still using technology wisely, but for a human cause, is what I look at it as. And so I want to really double down on that, in 2020.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. And I think man, we couldn't be more aligned in our mission. So we definitely want to support it. And I think Bo, like that last piece you said about not losing the human element is so that's, to me, that's what differentiates us.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we want to get better. So if you're seeing opportunities for how to evolve that, from a solution set so that it does facilitate more of that connection, I think that's huge, and that's certainly some feedback we would appreciate. With regard to like the membership site, what's the construction of all that? Is that, like there's multi-tools in there, or is that just like on a Train Heroic thing? Like what is that for you?
Yeah, so right now it's 2 levels. So the overall name of it is the Lifelong Athlete, but you get access to 2 tracks. So you get a performance track and a prevention track.
Cool.
The prevention track is body weight, band, and a pull-up bar. The performance track is everything you're going to find in a commercial gym for the most part. So the way I set it up is you usually start in the prevention side. Say if you're looking for a little bit of a shorter session, you just need something that you're trying to prevent injuries and allow yourself to go do the things you want to do.
Yep.
You're not really worried about improving in those things, but you might have some improvement because you actually worked on range of motion and a little bit of stability, so you could have a positive effect. But it's more for people that want that maintenance, self-care plan. And then the performance side, we actually go through, defined training cycles. So I'll take them through a triphasic, 3-month triphasic cycle every once in a while. I'll take them through different, base strength into power or whatever. And it's not really built around any one person's calendar. It's just kind of what I've built out for the year. But I try, I know most of my following, or a big chunk of my following, like swimming, triathlon, open water swimming. So I might pick a couple key dates there and maybe not build the program to taper for those events, but I might include a tutorial on how you could taper those events at that time of year, just because I know who's using it and whatnot. So yeah, you get 2 tracks of that. I host a monthly office hour on the 15th of each month. Where I on Zoom, I share the Zoom link and say, feel free to hop on and join.
Cool.
And we can kind of talk and answer personalized questions is something I use that time for. And then besides that, I'll post blogs, I'll post little quick tip videos.
And where are you posting all that stuff?
Say that again?
Where are you posting all that stuff?
So I usually just
you
post
said like
team feed, or I'll email to the people that are registered for the program, with the breakdown of everything available. My goal is to make that more consistent of a rhythm. Right now, it's very just it's consistent in terms of the amount of content per month, but not necessarily like a blog on the first week of the month, live video on the second. So I'd like to get some defined pillars of just, steady content they can expect. And that just allows me to be more prepared also, things moving forward. But yeah, most of that I post. I'm trying to minimize the overall, sorry, I had a call come in. Trying to minimize the overall use of other platforms and try to simplify it to email and app, because I feel like once you get too broad, then you just start losing stuff or you have too much to check. So like the Facebook group is more just like an overall following of the Lifelong Athlete. Could be people paying, people not paying. So it's definitely a second catch of potential clients, but it's also just kind of there. It's a closed group. You have to answer some questions to get invited or access to it, but that's just more I'm using for just the general outreach and trying to grow the community. Where once you're in the community, I try to keep it email and the app platform.
Okay, sweet. And Bo, where are you seeing like friction points within growing that? Like where you're like, oh man, if I could wave a magic wand, this would make it 50% better.
Simply being able to host live video on the app would be something in the future. It would be really cool to I love Zoom. Zoom's really easy, but if you're like, hey, today at 2:00, I'm going live on the team feed.
Sweet.
And then it saves that video to the team feed instead of me having to include a link. I think it just looks higher quality that way. And then also maximizes time on the app, which, results in more feedback and just familiarity, which is what I'm trying to drive, because the one side effect of going after 30, 40, 50, 60-year-olds and beyond is there's a little bit of onboarding process with the app. So, a lot of people might not have used an app platform before. So it's one of those things that the more I can keep them within the framework of the app, the better, is what I find.
Where within that onboarding, that part's really interesting to me. Where do you see like the friction point? Where are they like, oh, I'm getting stuck here?
Honestly, luckily, the interface is really easy to figure out. So I used to include a lot more instruction than I do now. So kudos to you guys for that. I used to have like 10 videos that I would send and be like, hey, watch this. You're going to break down of how to create your account, things like that. And now, and even just like, hey, here's how you watch the videos. I've honestly stopped doing that, and people have seemed to be figuring it out just fine on their own, which has been nice to see. But it honestly just comes down to even just simple things like they'll forget to log one piece of the training session. And then, I don't necessarily get the full notification then if it's not completely filled out or like something. So for me, it's just the notifications have been really powerful. So I want to maximize them to the best of my ability. And that is just getting people comfortable and doing it repetition wise. So I get full access to the notifications.
Yeah. Cool. No, those little details are really important. So when you say even something like, hey, when you don't log that last little piece, I don't get the thing. And then I can't make the magic moment of like, hey, good job on the thing, or, whatever it was. Right. All those little details are super important. And oftentimes, we get really generic feedback. Like the thing doesn't do what I want it to do. And you're like, okay.
Well, that's what I try to make a point to whenever you guys launch a new feature. If I'm like, yes, this is spot on, I try to at least respond to the email and be like, yes, thank you. I needed this. So, and that way, because I know sometimes you launch something and then you get crickets and you're like, well, I hope it's working.
Yeah. 10,000 people got it. Nobody said anything.
Right.
Either great or terrible. Not sure. Yeah. Cool. So Bo, help me out. Like if you're looking at like some of your kind of core jobs here, like maybe help me out in just terms of like understanding where we can create the most value for you. Would you say it's like helping you, I guess, improve some of your core jobs and workflows? And I think the things I'd put into that bucket would be like, hey, I need to program way more efficiently. I need to just cut down on the waste. I need to, see everything I need to do in one place. I need to help review video feedback or something like that. Is it more around like improving core jobs? Is it more around like growing the business? Like, hey, what would it be like if Train Heroic threw you a bunch of leads? Is that something you're super interested in? Is it like, hey, I want to create new product types? Like, where do you see the most of the value in the future?
Yeah, I mean, the lead piece would be really interesting because I know there's a whole different. Probably, I don't know if I fit the demographic that's going to the actual website for Train Heroic or what that would look like. So I don't even know if it would be super beneficial one way or another, or sending people my people more direct to Train Heroic and kind of figuring out what that looks like. But I think in terms of workflow, I'm still learning. As new features come out, I'm trying to learn how to implement them better. But being able to simplify my time from when someone says, yes, I'm interested in training, I send them out an assessment to complete to the time they get their first training program for, let's say for a one-on-one, client. Yes, I make it very individual for them, but a lot of the entry-level stuff I do very similar for clients because I'm like, hey, I want to actually see how you respond to this before we go into really specific individual things. This is just what I've learned over the years to look for. So, once I get the assessment results, which I run through the app, it'd be great if I could cut down that time and be like, okay, you fall into a category 1, so you're going to get this foundation program for your first month. Yep. You fall into a category 2, you're going to get this foundation. So then as soon as they submit, they could go right into their first training session if they wanted to. And not that it's going to lose that personal touch, but I also want to, when they commit, I want to blow the doors off when they decide that they're going to step through and do this.
That like wow moment really quickly.
Right. So that's something, I could see. And then also just the long-term planning of things. So sorry, I got to walk out of here real quick. Hey, Roxy, no. The long-term planning of things, just, looking at multiple months, laid out one in front of the other, or even just, I'm building out programs ahead of time or building out certain cycles. How can I kind of, drag and drop those in terms of a more just flow of, all right, this month is focused on strength, mobility, whatever. This next month is going to be focused on power, more the higher level side of it versus the actual individual training sessions, just to keep, my mind clear of what I'm doing for each athlete and everything of that nature.
Okay. And Bo, when you came to Train Rogue, did you have a bunch of stuff, for example, in Excel, and you were like porting your library over, or were you kind of creating your library from scratch?
I created the library from scratch. Everything else was just kind of handwritten before then. And then, now I'm trying to just figure out how to speed up that time of, when I'm something down to, because I still write a lot down, even though I have the resources to, use the platform a little bit more. It's still easier for me to write and kind of see things out in front of me. So if there was even just like a grid where I could see all of it more, just laid out, it would help big time.
Are you writing like true kind of like periodized programs, meaning that like I'm writing a program for 6 weeks and it's progressing pretty steadily over that time, and then I drop the program on the calendar, or do you go straight to the calendar and you're just writing right on the calendar?
A little bit of both. It depends on the client. So sometimes I have to, spend a little more specific time with what they're doing, or if they're following a nice simple flow and they seem to be progressing nicely on what I have them doing, then it's more of a pre-built program that I just go in and tweak based off of their equipment that they have available.
Okay, cool. That's really helpful.
Just a heads up, I got to hop in my car and start driving. So I'm good to keep talking, but I just got to get on the road.
Oh, do your thing. And also tell me when you got to stop.
Yeah, no, you're good. I just didn't want you thinking, what is he doing?
No worries. And then, so Bo, when you were talking about kind of like onboarding clients, so like your membership site, all that, is that something you're driving through our marketplace, or is that something where you're facilitating it somehow offline, collecting payments offline? Like what are you doing with that?
Yeah, so right now, a lot of that traffic is coming through my website. So if they read a blog or something like that. So I use MemberSpace. I have a Squarespace account for my website. So I use MemberSpace for that. And what they do is when they log in, they get information for how to.
My guy's here. Give me like a minute or two.
You're good.
So
no
sorry.
problem.
Hey, Bo.
Yes, sir.
Oh man, you are a champion for waiting. Thank you so much.
No, you're good. You're good.
All right, we left off. You were talking to me about your membership site and how you're facilitating that.
Yeah. So I have Squarespace as my website base. So I use what it's called member space.
Okay.
So essentially, someone will log on, or sign up through my website. They get directed to, a portal that I have available on the website, with just some secure pages that gives them instructions how to download the app, enter the correct access codes, and then has a simple 1, 2, 3 of how they can kick off their training.
Yep.
I started using that just because I wanted to have a little bit more, going back to that onboarding experience. I wanted it to be a more real time for someone. Instead of just being, all right, you pay, you get access to the app, and then boom, there's not really a welcome or anything like that. It just might be or I don't have as much control over the welcome side of things, I guess. Is the way. So they get hit with a welcome video, they get hit with their 3 easy steps to really start training, and then member space has all the integrations I need from connecting ConvertKit and things like that from an email standpoint.
Can we dig into that? What other integrations are important to you? So ConvertKit's kind of like what, your email?
Yeah, so I've been using I used to use MailChimp, and then they changed their whole pricing structure, and it didn't really fit what I needed. I had familiarity with ConvertKit in the past, so I went back to them. So in terms of integrations, email is definitely number one. And then I know, I believe the marketplace does this as well, but for my membership side of things, members get complete control of their billing, so they can cancel whenever they want. All of that stuff, because I want to be as transparent with them as possible and give them as much freedom with that lower level option. One-on-ones don't have as much freedom with the cancellation of billing. They have to actually reach out to me and say, hey, I don't want to continue, because I want to use that time to haven't got feedback yet with the high level of retention, which is good, but I kind of want to use that time to at least have an outward call, to close things up at the end of their experience, and just learn how I can get better as a coach as well.
Cool. And then what are you doing from a billing perspective, and how do you manage all that stuff?
Yeah, so member space handles all the billing for me. When they sign up, especially for the so I only use that for the membership site. I use FreshBooks as my billing system for teams and for one-on-one clients.
Okay.
So FreshBooks, you can either set up auto payment, or you can, pay each month when the invoice comes out. So it gives the client a little bit of control there. At least feels like they're part of the process, but they agree to give me a 30-day notice for cancellation for one-on-ones and teams.
Okay.
And a lot of that is just honestly, so, I'm not too far ahead programming wise, and then all of a sudden I got all this stuff set up and it's not necessary. Or it gives me time to rectify the situation if it's something that they just need more of or less of, or feel like is not a good fit. So I have that little wiggle room there.
So you can kind of save a client if you learn it. It's
absolutely.
Not whatever that pain is. That makes sense. So I guess that's kind of a decent amount of systems. How easy is that for you to manage kind of your whole toolkit or tech stack, if you will?
Honestly, I've just done it for so long that I've been able to cut down the time. So I use Zapier or Zapier, I forget however you say it. So a lot of that integration was just a one-time setup, and now it runs itself. I try to have enough in place that's automated just to get the basics covered, which frees me up to actually go in. For example, now part of my day is an hour I spend going in to train Heroic and responding to comments and training sessions that are complete. Because all of that is all the other stuff is automated from the onboarding and whatnot. I'd still like to see it improve. I got some ideas for how to improve it, just in terms of, like I said, videos playing right on the app, check-ins and stuff like that I can do. But, a lot of that onboarding I've been able to automate pretty well. That allows that free time for me to actually go in and be more personalized.
And are you doing I don't know, when people are doing, say, I don't know, whether it's your personal or your team-based stuff or the membership side, are they doing anything with like par Qs or liability stuff, or is that just like, hey, let's get training?
So I make them fill out that they have to sign off that they have had clearance from a doctor to participate in an exercise program. It's not a full par Q, but kind of going through some of the lingo I've learned just from the legal side of enough to at least cover the bare bones of things. And then one-on-one clients, I go through a whole history with them. So a lot of them will have medical records out and stuff like that when we initially talk. And I usually am on Zoom and recording the call kind of like this, of just to be able to go back and review. And they also have to sign off on those, I'm cleared to exercise based off of, the recommendation of a doctor, or here are my limitations and things like that.
That makes total sense. Okay, cool. All right. You have a magic wand. You get to do 3 things in Train Heroic, 2 of which are not related, or let's say all 3 of which are not related to a live video feature. What are you doing?
That's a good question. In terms of the onboarding, I would like to be able to include a welcome video that plays right on the app when they first open the app after creating their account. Would be the number one thing. So that would just be, a pre-recorded, uploaded feature. Just kind of sharing my journey maybe, or why I started all this type of deal and what they can expect, and add that little personal touch right off the bat. So they're seeing a, face-to-face connection. The second thing, I'm super pumped about the swap exercises, but I would like to be able to play a bigger role in allowing that process to take shape. So for example, the way I did it when I got the notification that it was live is, I sent out 5 bullet points on how they can regulate the swap exercise feature and not just go too much down a rabbit hole that they're completely changing the program and not getting the benefits.
Yeah.
So I was like, you got to switch a squat for a squat, hinge for a hinge. Like, don't go vertical pulling on me when you're supposed to be doing a squat variation.
Yeah.
So I'd almost like to be able to select 3 or 4 options on the back end, or kind of pair certain movements. So I don't know, like I'll just take a back squat, for example. If I could, on the back end, if they want to swap that exercise, they'd have the pick of the goblet squat, they'd have a pick of a dumbbell front squat, or they'd have the pick of some sort of band variation of a squat. Yep. And that's something I could kind of group like exercises on the back end. So then when they would actually go to search the swap exercise feature, it would pinpoint their search a little more effectively.
Yep.
And then the third one, I think, is just probably continued improvement of the notification system. So I'd love to get a better breakdown of their volume of training in more real time, in the sense of, all right, this week, it turned out their volume was, 3,500 pounds or whatever it came out to be, compared to last week was X, amount, and kind of see that progression a little bit more real time versus, right now I go in and I kind of look at it, I try to look at it from their perspective on the app and whatnot. But having that feedback a little bit more in real time, especially from a membership standpoint, would allow me to offer more, powerful feedback. If someone's feeling worn down or feeling like they're not challenged enough, things of that nature, I can give them, more specific feedback to a larger group of individuals.
So you're kind of using the data to go in and create like a personalized touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's really cool. I guess with that, like the volume stuff and whatnot, how much would you say, or actually, let me back up. When you're doing this stuff with the notifications and you said reviewing responses and whatnot, do you find yourself doing more of your job on mobile or on web?
It used to be web, but now it's more mobile.
And where would you like that to be?
Definitely mobile, just because it's something I can, pull up. I don't always have my laptop with me. I try to section off times where I'm actually working on the programs and things of that nature, and really quiet my mind and focus on what I got to do. Where the response or the feedback side might occur in a coffee shop. It might occur, as I'm waiting for my wife to do something at, a store or whatever. So I kind of pick and choose my times with that, just when we're out and about. So that's been definitely more on the mobile side.
Okay, cool. So your mobile is you're on the go, a lot of like interactivity, but then like when you're being creative and you want to be like in almost like a drafting mode, you're kind of stowing away and getting on your laptop.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Do you see that changing? Like, do you see yourself ever wanting to go full draft to publish on mobile, or is that like it's almost a different headspace you're in?
I think it would just, I don't really have the answer for what the interface would look like, but it would have to really kind of flow with just my the way I work. Uh, like right now, I have a dual screen setup that I use, so I might pull up their previous month of programming on just a different or a different tab,
Oh wow. Okay.
and then I have the current month of what I'm thinking and just seeing their progress, seeing some of their notes, so that way I can always have the canvas open, but then always go back and reference things from what they've already done.
Okay.
So I don't know if a mobile device will ever allow for that, sort of flexibility.
Hmm.
And honestly, I just find that I can program a lot faster with that setup,
Yeah.
and still provide a program that I feel really, really good
Okay.
about. So I think if it would all come down to the interface and what that would look like and how easily I'd be able to kind of reference other points. But I spend a good bit of time going through what they've already done, and reviewing notes and things like that. So right now my dual, setup really works well for that.
That's awesome. What would you say like the two biggest reference points you're seeking are when you're making those like, I guess, programming decisions?
Yeah, so this is where the human element comes in. I always ask for the extremes each month. So about halfway through the month, I want to know what's the most challenging exercise of the month, what's the easiest exercise of the month, and also general flow. So, a lot of my clients work in many different capacities. Some of them are at-home workouts. Some of them are their local gym, or training center. Some of them are bouncing around hotels as they're on the road. So I look for pitfalls of, I couldn't really do this exercise combination because it just didn't really work for my, background of what I had, available that day.
Hmm.
Or, my ceiling height isn't high enough for me to do a jump with my hands over my head, and stuff like that. So I go a lot off of their feedback that they'll post on the team feed. When I'll ask them, or right now I'm starting to use the messaging feature a little bit more just
Hmm.
to, ask for feedback. And then I also just look at their intensity is the second biggest variable for me.
Okay.
And the way I explain it, go
Comments is
ahead.
number one in varying degrees, and then number two is intensity.
Yep.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, whether or not it's truly an 8, if they're perceiving it as an 8, that's something I have to go off of, without being there in the room. So I definitely spend a lot of time explaining what the numbers mean to me or what I'm looking for from the numbers. And then, it helps paint a clearer picture when they're actually submitting their data. And that's just a gradual process over time that I implement that. And, that's through phone calls. And also, I might include a chart that says, here's what a 5 means to me if you put a 5.
Okay.
And by doing that, it helps them understand what I'm looking for from those numbers.
Sweet. So quick question, and I don't know if you could answer this or not, but you seem to be like a very system-driven coach. And I'm curious, like as you continually refine and create efficiencies in your process, how much time do you find yourself spending right now with like a one-on-one client? And what would you say the upward bound on like the number of clients you think you could handle would be?
So I've honestly per month I spend about 2 to 3 hours per one-on-one is
Okay.
what I have it down to. So it's gotten pretty efficient, and the most that I would say out of that 2 to 3 hours, an hour and a half is spent on reviewing program and building out the next month,
Okay.
and the rest is spent on follow-up and feedback and adjustments from there.
Okay. Cool.
So I would like to see the membership side grow more, just because then it frees me up to do a lot more just of this in person, or getting creative with ideas. But I think I've kind of set the number at 50 one-on-ones if I were to go straight one-on-ones.
Sorry, you said 50?
Yeah, 50. Yep.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So right now, it's like you're kind of getting this new product off the ground in ways that you have to do a lot of your time because you're figuring out and you're growing. You have a lot of energy in it. But once you do, you figured out the one-on-one side. So if you get more leads, you could deal with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Well, Bo, man, this has been freaking amazing. I really appreciate your candor and willingness to open up and do this stuff. I mean, coaches like you are the ones that they're making a big difference in the world. And, you know, hearing how much you care about both affecting teams and also creating a reasonable livelihood for yourself is, I think, really respectful. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. It was fun to talk.
Do you have anything you want from me beforehand, like any questions or just curiosities you have about where we're going?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is if you're ever looking for coaches to get involved and kind of share with other coaches how they can do this, I would be all ears and willing to do that.
Wow. We really appreciate it. I'll certainly bring that up with DJ, who runs our marketing team. I know over the coming year, we're going to be focusing a lot on education. And as somebody who's kind of like, I think, writing a pretty good playbook yourself and also interested in kind of explaining your influence and giving back, like maybe that's an interesting opportunity to explore.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Well, Bo, you're the man. Thank you so much.
No problem. Let me know if you guys need anything else.
Big time. No, absolutely. And I think the same goes our way. Like if you see, we're going to be releasing a lot over the next month and a half. So like be as specific and detailed with the feedback as you can. We're definitely here to
Absolutely. Will do.
Right on, Bo. All right.
See you.
Bye.